Hey, it's Matt. I'm back with another 7x10" transparent watercolor. This is an orange-crowned warbler that was visiting the crabapple tree one spring around the house. Every year we seem to get one or two orange crowns lately, and they're always beautiful to see. Although they're kind of nondescript warblers, they really are beautiful. I started by transferring the sketch and frisketing off the main bird and branches, and then went about washing in the background greens, and I kept it really wet and washy for this part and was trying to charge in some of the colors so I'd have a nice kind of blurry background that recedes off to kind of a greenish white that would frame the bird. So working on that wet background allowed some of these colors to bleed, and once those started setting in, I went about washing in some other things with kind of a mid-level of blurriness, and so you can see some other leaves that I just put in. I find it's helpful to have, an obvious foreground and then a middle ground background. Usually the kind of a series of those things stacking up makes for a nice convincing feeling of depth. And this one I was trying to work a little outside my usual comfort zone and trying to have it be a little bit more misty and a little bit softer than I might usually have, and kind of allow for a little less detail. Once I was happy with the overall background, I peeled off that frisket and transferred the main sketch back over to the page using a folding bone and some tracing paper. That transfers the graphite over and leaves a nice light mark that you can use to establish your main colors in. And then I went about using some of those same colors I used for the background at a little bit greater intensity and starting to paint the foreground elements. And this was almost all done with a sharp number 2 brush. I think you can already see how it starts to it blend in with the background by using those same tones and frisketing off the one and then kind of bringing in the detail secondarily. Ideally, it shouldn't have too stark of a difference. It should look like it kind of blends in with the rest. There's something I liked about the pose of this bird. It's not a very traditional bird painting pose because he's not, it's kind of straight on the side, but there's something the way this bird was looking over its shoulder, and you kind of had a back view of it that was different than normal, but I don't know, I thought it was kind of a charming, different sort of look to it. And I also liked the way, although the photo wasn't great, I liked the way it was kind of vignetted with this background and a little backlit, but I thought it'd be a really good challenge to get that lighting to work. You can see on the left, well, it was on the left, that the photo I had a very gray white sky on it, and I decided to push that more into just kind of a smoky light green background. I thought that'd be a fun way to just kind of make it more colorful and at the same time give myself a little challenge and do something different than I usually do. Orange-crowned warblers are just so... they're drab. There's not a lot that... they're sort of streaky, but they're not super streaky. You're kind of yellowy, but they're kind of, olive. And there's just not a lot that really pops off at you. And that's kind of the charm of them. So in doing this, it was kind of an exercise in trying to say, okay, well, how much do you emphasize that split eye ring? And, how much streaking do you really put in to have it identifiable and yet still look right and try to make it look beautiful, because they really are. Even though they're drab, they're drab in a beautiful sort of way, or they're beautiful in a drab sort of way. Depends how you look at it. Getting all these apple blossoms right was a bit of a challenge in that I didn't want to have super detail. I wanted to have them be a little bit loose, and So I was trying to be restrained later in the painting and not put in every last anther and stamen on the flowers, and just kind of keep it at a level that was a little more sane. And also that would balance better with some of the leaves on the page that are a little bit less detailed. So you can see that I had both the butcher's tray for mixing colors and I had my well plate out. And what I had was I had the well plate from doing all the background colors, and I'd pull color from that and then kind of fine tune it on the butcher's tray to kind of get things working. And that way I had a consistent kind of feel for the background. On this particular painting, when I peeled the frisket up, it was older frisket, and as I peeled it up, it picked up some of the texture of the paper as I took it off. So and left it a little fuzzy, which it took the washes initially kind of a little strangely. So that slowed me down a little on working on the bird. I was kind of getting a feel for how the paint worked on that roughed surface, more on the flowers and the vegetation. So I put a little more time into that area, experimenting to make sure it was all going to work before I went and did the bird. So I did this a little, I won't say out of order, but I normally would have spent a little more time on the bird too, kind of taking everything at the same level. But I was hedging my bets a little. You can see the reference photo I have on the left and how backlit it actually was and how devoid of color most of the actual photo was. There are elements about it I loved, and yet as a photo it's not a great photo. But I thought it could be a neat moment to paint. So it's kind of experimental on this one. Trying something different. Late in the painting, I was mostly just sharpening up little edges and working on tiny details, crisping up the edges of the flowers and putting in just tiny little things to build that depth and kind of clean up edges. And that usually, that last kind of, all those little edges put a lot of pop into the painting that make it much more convincing. If you quit before doing that, it definitely would look a little, I wouldn't say rough, but just I think those last details really give it a polish that is more than the time that goes into it. If that makes sense. Here I switched to the magnifier so I can get a better look at these tiny details and the way the feathers wrap around the wing and things like that. he's starting to look respectable. So I put my name on it, picked out a few more details, and then called it finished. So there you go, a 7 by 10 inch transparent watercolor of a orange-crowned warbler. Thanks for watching. If you get a chance, leave a comment or have a peek at the blog or website.